the hymn-loving pastor of all time, Robert J. Morgan. What a thrill to have you here. Anytime,
Thank you.
Robert.
Count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done.
I'm surprised at what you have done, because everything else on the table here is your handiwork. You have 3 books this year.
Well, they sort of proliferated.
Yes.
But
oh, now let me just catch up our viewers, because you know these. Then Sings My Soul, Volume 1, Volume 2. I feel we lived in these for months on this program, and we're enriched by them. Your latest book is A Horse of a Little Different Color. Meditations on 366 best loved hymns. There are no notes in this book.
no, just the stories and the words to the hymns themselves. And the thing that makes this book different is that every devotional for 366 days is tied to the date of a hymn.
In some
So,
way.
in some way.
The
So-
birth of the author, the birth of the
Or maybe the
lyricist,
day
or
the hymn was written, or
first introduced.
yes, or first sung for the first time.
Right.
So we give that little historical devotional preface, and then we give the words of the hymn, which minister to us in very deep ways, and then we end every day with a scripture verse.
Well, I'm going to do a proper introduction here in a minute, but while we've got Count Your Blessings in our mind, and it will be for 3 more weeks, tell us the story that you've chosen for Count Your Blessings, the insight.
Well, the insight that I have in this particular story has to do with the composer of the music.
It's June 10th.
Yes, and it's E.O. Excel. He was a very prolific evangelist and songwriter. He wrote and composed some of these gospel tunes that we love so much. And he's the one who, this was his birthday on the date that you mentioned. And he wrote the music that, you know, that happy little tune, count your blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. Now, I'm not a minister of worship leader, but that's the way the tune goes.
Yeah.
But you know, it's very helpful, I think, to go to sleep every night thanking the Lord for 3 or 4 different blessings during that day. It's one thing to be blessed, but it's another thing to review that blessing, to become conscious of it, and to thank the Lord for it. And I've found that for about a year I've been practicing, when I turn off the light at night, instead of praying about my problems or thinking or worrying about my problems, I just say, Lord, I'm going to thank you for 3 things from today. And I count my blessings, and you know, you sleep better and you wake up in a better frame of mind. And that was in the author's mind when he said, when you are discouraged, thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done.
Yes, gratitude. Establishes the altitude for living, right?
It does.
And you've got the words to all of the hymns referenced.
Yes.
Let me just open a page. As a matter of fact, let me open to today's date. How about that, Robert?
Great.
Oh, there's so many I'd love to talk about here, but well, how appropriate for the season is that? Bringing in the Sheaves. There's an oldie but goodie. And what's the story that you're telling us about this old hymn?
The story here is very interesting. It's by Knowles, K-N-O-L-E-S, Shaw, who was born on this date in 1834. And he became a great evangelist, especially in the west of the U.S. and throughout Texas. He led so many people to Christ. He would go from town to town and from city to city just preaching, one of the old-time frontier itinerant evangelists. And so he wrote this song. Now, the interesting thing is that he actually died tragically. He was on a train. He was going to a town in Texas in which he was to preach. The train had a terrible wreck. He was in the middle of telling someone the gospel and explaining to someone his work and his message when he was killed in this terrible wreck. But he left behind this song that says, bringing in the sheaves, we shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. You know that song? Bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves, we shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves.
They're dying over here. Okay, we're just trying to help the viewer. I love what he said. He told a friend he never became discouraged, for he loved his work and had confidence in the gospel's power. Moments later, the train careened off the tracks and Shaw was killed in the wreck.
He led 11,000 people to Christ during his lifetime that he recorded, but how many more after his death, have come to the Lord through his singing and the songs that he left behind. He was known as the singing evangelist.
You know, this is such a power tool. I shared about a friend who struggled recently with depression, and she started her quiet time with the Lord at the beginning of each day, singing with her hymn book, singing hymns and saying what it's doing to lift her spirits. And I've had some of you respond by email and say, this is what's working for me too.
Yeah.
So the words are here.
Hymns are therapeutic theology. They are singable theology. And you know, we talked about the miners coming out of the ground. That is the closest thing that our world sees to a resurrection. People who were thought to have been dead, who suddenly come up out of the ground, out of the cave. And what were they doing? They were singing. All of those people around the site were singing. Because when we have new life, then we want to sing. It is therapeutic to our hearts to sing.
The term rebirth has been used.
Yeah.
Has been used.
Yeah.
Let me, speaking of singing, you come from Opryland area of
Yes.
Nashville.
We do.
And you've had some challenges down there.
We had the
Too much
floods
water.
in May. The first weekend of May, it was on a Sunday. We had to, we have 2 worship services at our church. The second service, we completely just had to kind of abbreviate and leave in the middle. Everybody's house was being flooded. The church was being flooded. The water came down 18 inches, just in a very short space of time. The Cumberland River flooded. We were right beside the Opryland Hotel. The hotel was evacuated and flooded. Our basement, all of our church basement areas were flooded, $170,000 worth of damage. We had 18 families in our congregation that was flooded out.
Lost their homes.
Yes, lost their homes. So it was it was sort of a weekend to remember, but we didn't have any loss of life in our church. We have, you know, received funds for a lot of the damage that was done, and it pulled us together, and we're just praising the Lord and counting our blessings.
Boy, it is one of the things we're seeing in so many of these natural disasters and calamities of so many kinds. People pulling together, finding unexpected blessings in time of trial. We did see on the news that Grand Ole Opry is restored as well.
It has started back up again
damaged.
full speed, yes. I live right beside the Opry, and boy, did you see the floodlights and the lights up in the sky and everything when they had that first
back in business.
That first show back at the Opry House, yeah.
Robert J. Morgan, I don't know how you do it because you preach every Sunday. You are the pastor of Donelson Fellowship, the Donelson Fellowship.
Right, in Nashville,
It's an interesting stream of Baptists, too. What do you call yourselves?